How's it going, everybody? Buckle in. It's going to be a busy night with your Big Gold Belt Wrestling podcast. Dynamite 250 has come and gone, and we have a lot to talk about coming from AEW with a packed show last night down in Arkansas. God, what else we got to get into tonight? We got to talk about Mariah May and Toni Storm, since that happened after last week's show. We got to talk about an near hour-long match last night, and who knows what else. All kinds of stuff going on in pro wrestling. Buckle in, folks. Your Big Gold Belt Wrestling podcast starts right now.
Big Gold Belt, 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 Big Gold Belt. All I really want is that Big Gold Belt, 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 Big Gold Belt. All I really need is that Big Gold Belt.
How's it going, everybody? Glad you're here with us tonight, Thursday nights, 8 p.m., your Big Gold Belt Wrestling podcast. We got a near full house tonight. Going into today, we weren't quite sure how many of the crew was going to be available, but we got 4 of us tonight, so this is going to be a fun show. We're going to keep it busy tonight. I am Will up here at the top of the screen on the left. To my right, we got Silly Celis. Down below, we got Damian G from his palatial estate in the Lone Star State of Texas, and of course, the Giant Crab Jamal, making it a full circle. Gentlemen, how are you doing tonight?
Doing good on this end. And Will, shout out to you for your cold open. It seems like everybody on StreamYard's been talking about cold opens recently when I've been looking at different videos. So flawless on your cold opening.
Hey, we try to keep things moving here.
It's not 100 degrees, so I'm good.
Seriously, the heat has finally broke. There are some clouds. I don't know about how it is where everyone else is these days, but after so many days of near 100 degrees, I will take these 80 temperatures with clouds. Absolutely.
I actually had the windows down driving today, so that was a help.
There you go. Hopefully we get a reprieve for a little bit here in mid-July. So, folks, lots going on in wrestling. Lots going on in wrestling, as there always is. But I guess the highlight of the week, the biggest thing of the week, was last night, the 250th episode of AEW Dynamite, which just seems wild to me because 3 out of the 4 of us here were all at the very first episode here in DC when it happened, when they premiered. So it's like we were there at the beginning, and here we are now years later, and we're at episode 250. And instead of it being in DC, it was in Little Rock, Arkansas. So quite a different locale for episode 250, but lots of stories coming out of last night. And I think we'll start at the top with how they opened the show. The opener was MJF versus Will Ospreay for the international title. And to say these guys had a marathon, I don't know, that might if that's understating it or not, but those guys decided to go out there and go the whole first hour of the show. Probably and then some with intros and everything, but a near hour-long match. To some people are calling it a statement match with the situation where AEW is at these days. I guess we can get into that, but I'm not sure what to think of it, because a lot of people going into the show were like, they're giving away one of the biggest matches they can possibly do on free TV. I saw people comparing it to when WCW gave away Hogan versus Goldberg in the Georgia Dome. And here we are. It's happened now. They did this epic long, near hour-long deal. So it wasn't a squash. It wasn't anything like, short and sweet. It wasn't like, a big run-in to like, get out of doing the match. They definitely did the match. They went a full hour. What do we think of this? I don't know. What were our thoughts on the MJF and Maxwell J and Ospreay marathon last night on Dynamite 250? Who wants to get in here first?
I'll jump in there first. Go ahead. Crab, you go first.
I'll start. I'll make it quick. They've done this before. So I'm not sure what the big deal is. I was at the first Grand Slam when Brian and Kenneth went not 60 minutes, but they went like 29 and change.
It was a long one.
It was a very long one to open the show. We've seen Brian and Adam Page. They went an hour. And of course, we've seen an hour-long match in the in pay-per-views and stuff like that. So, having a match just go that long isn't necessarily unheard of. It's just rare, as it should be rare because it's an hour. Now, the big question is, you have a 2-hour show. Could they have done that caliber match in 25 minutes? Sure. What do you replace? How else do you feel that time? Do you think that an hour on these two guys is the best use of that time when, of course, AEW, and I will say this until they do it, should focus on building stars, building talent, keeping the storylines going and things like that. And then they spend half their show on the one match. Now, whether you like both guys or not really isn't the problem or the question. It's just about the fact that it is an hour-long match on free TV or cable, rather, the best use of a 2-hour show. Mm-hmm. And I'm not convinced that it is. However, the fact that we're talking about it now means that it has served a purpose. So I'm okay with it.
That's a good point. The idea that it's created conversation. If
Correct.
Nothing else. Let's get in here.
I'll even add one more. This is an ROH match that was one of my favorites I saw live in Baltimore, Death Before Dishonor, where you had Roderick Strong and Jay Lethal go 60 minutes, and that ended in a draw where it was no winner in that match. And like what you said, Kraken, when you have these 60-minute matches, you need to have them pop up every once in a while because you always want to think of, okay, how long would this match go, or how long are you going to give these guys time based on free TV? Sometimes you just got to feed that to the fans to keep things interesting. Just like if you have a ring break in the middle of the ring, if you do that type of spot, or if you have a world title match televised or shown on televised TV or free TV, you just got to have that from time to time. I'm not mad at it. I'm even liking how they added avenues. Like one of the things that was trending was a little girl hitting MJF, and then he gave her the finger afterwards, which was a good spot. But that shows how you build entertainment as you tell a mini story in the ring as you go that long of a match. But what is the ultimate payoff? And I think it had a good payoff at the end. You think it will continue as it goes to London later in August. So you have a continuation of it. And this is something that when you talk about a Spotlight episode number 250, you want to make sure you have something memorable, even if it's something that we've seen before, as Krabby said. So I'm not mad at it at all. It's definitely something for the real wrestling fans that they will enjoy, where you see, two guys go at it for about an hour. It's just something different. But AEW still has to figure out their identity of what they want to do even after 250 episodes, because you do have to build their stars. You do have to make sure you get something where people are coming back to watch. But even as you do this as a one-off, what is going to be your next thing to build it up? That's always going to be my question.
Now,
so I'm curious.
Yeah, go ahead, Dave.
I'm just curious that how a couple of weeks ago we talked about what was next for Ospreay and Swerve, right? And we talked about potentially a rematch going on there. Now we have this with Max and Will, and I think honestly this is what's going to happen. Hopefully, in my book, we're going to get another stip for London, another stipulation for London. Do we make it 2 out of 3 falls? Do we make it a steel cage match? Something to that effect that's going to fit the AEW brand, because the hour-long thing is better suited for me, in my opinion, for television. Mm-hmm. Pay-per-view, not so much. We got long enough pay-per-views with AEW. Yeah. I don't need an hour-long Iron Man match or Iron Woman match for AEW. If Blood and Guts wasn't happening, then that main event picture would be a little bit more spread out. We wouldn't have had to do an hour-long match in the first hour. If they were pushing more women beside the 4 that they were pushing in the segments and in the matches and such, it would have been more spread out. So all that to say is that their deck is very top heavy. Oh yeah, Jericho's there too. Fighting Minoru Suzuki for whatever reason. So the build up to London is going to be interesting because the card is going to be very top heavy, and we'll talk about Mariah and so forth. But did I like it? Because I went back and I watched it, Will, after you told me, like, hey, check this out. So I went back and I watched it, put it on two speed. The spots were good. The action was good. The storytelling, except for the little girl beating the crap out of MJF. I love that part. Yeah. But did it serve a purpose? Yes. It whet the appetite to find if Will can get the win back and if Max can do it without cheating for London. I think that's what they were building towards. So Am I going to be excited for it in London? Not so much. Did I like this match I saw as a one-off? They should have kept it that way. They should have moved on and gone their separate ways after that. So 50-50.
Yeah, I think that this is the start of the continuation towards booking towards London. There's a bunch of different ways they can go about it, because it wasn't that Friedman won. It was a goofy finish with the ring and all that other stuff too. Mm-hmm. So Will is definitely going to be looking for his comeuppance. And then of course you have Shane Strickland in the picture, being the champion. Obviously the initial thought was that Swerve is a transitional champion, and that's proven not to be the case. Or if we're still in this state of transition that will happen at Wembley, it is possible that they're building the show up for Ospreay to leave Wembley with both belts. I'm not saying they should. I'm not saying that they will. I'm just saying that that's something that has to be on the table as we sit right now. As far as the match goes, and why we're kicking off our show, we're talking about a match like this, is that it is interesting the state of AEW 250 episodes into Dynamite, and that you have Friedman, you have Ospreay, and they're given the first hour of the show. And one thing I will give AEW credit for, the main event isn't always the thing that closes the show.
Right.
And also, of course, if they push this, if they have the main event at 9:00, then we know how long the match is going to go. So, it is one of those things where, from a logistical reason, if you know that you're going to do this, you got to do it. But also, more importantly, you have to have the personnel that can pull this off. There aren't too many guys or wrestlers in general, that can go an hour.
Right. Especially at the pace they went.
Yeah.
And let's also make this clear. I think one of the big criticisms I was seeing about it, and something that jumped out at me, is they were not holding anything back. This was like big move, big spots the whole way through. I mean, hell, you had in the final 10 minutes, Ospreay doing that whole darn flip off the top, land on his feet, after 50 minutes of wrestling and stuff. Mm-hmm. It was they were doing all the athletic stuff they could possibly do, to where it was what's left, after a full darn hour of it. It did not feel like they were holding back for we're holding this back for match 2, or we're holding this back for Wembley. It was they were throwing everything in the kitchen sink out there last night.
Right. So the question is, now the argument could be, why did they give this match away for free? I would say the argument is Dynamite 250, Little Rock, Arkansas, a haven of AEW.
A hotbed
of AEW.
Yes.
Is this the place for that match? Because we've seen, obviously, pay-per-views are one thing. Grand Slam is a special show. They have all of these other special shows, and you could argue that Dynamite 250 in and of itself is a special show, but it doesn't scream Little Rock.
No, that strikes me as they did not realize this was the 250th show until after they had booked the building.
Oh, yeah.
That's the impression I get. Someone figured out eventually, wait a second, episode 250. Oh, we're in Little Rock. It was not the other way around. Where it was let's book a specific place for 250.
Yeah, because that seems like, a match of this caliber, and not that Little Rock itself has to be a damper, Little Rock's a decent town. It's just that this match didn't really feel as big as it should have been, as they're promoting the show and Dynamite is coming on this week. It's Friedman versus Ospreay for the international title. Okay, fine, that's fine. I personally could take or leave that match, and obviously you can't sell it as an Iron Man match that isn't. But it's just it just doesn't feel as big. And even after the match, knowing what it is, knowing that there was a title change and all that good stuff, it still is kind of oh yeah, that happened. Cool. It doesn't really have the weight behind it. Right. So I wonder if AEW kind of missed the boat in that regard, where they know they have something big, they know they have something special, and they really didn't kind of sell it or tease it, rather, because they can't really sell it, but they got to kind of tease it just to say hey, this is the show that you want to watch. Unfortunately, Khan says that about every show, every week for the last 5 years. So you can't really say that anymore. So I think that's kind of the thing also is that fine, but it is kind of like, this doesn't have the weight behind it that it should. And I think people are just praising the match because it went an hour,
Right.
Or people are praising the match because it was on free TV.
Yeah.
But realistically, it doesn't feel as big as it should, and I think that's kind of like a slight miss on AEW's part.
Yeah, well, that's part of what I was getting at. I think for some people, they see a near hour-long match or a match that goes an hour, and that for some reason, just that length automatically to them means the length means it's great automatically. Just that. But they went an hour, that means right there, oh my God, it must at least be 4.5-star match. Then you add in all these big moves they did, all these big spots, brawled in the crowd. He's flipping off the top rope, landing on his feet. It's like you're checking off, box on a
indie box.
Yep.
Exactly. Of all the hit stuff that you do in modern wrestling, paint by numbers, big moves, long match, blah, 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 internet darlings. There you go. I don't know. So I think for some people, that's all it takes. And it's like, oh, it went an hour. It must be legendary. It must be an all-timer because it went an hour.
Now, with that said, we talk about the match. We spent 18 minutes talking about the match and how it was and its reverence within the show.
Right.
We haven't mentioned a damn thing else in the show.
Nope.
But, and that's I will follow that. I will take that.
Okay.
And this was my thought then when I watched that show. The match that followed it was Sasha Banks and Nyla Rose. Wait, Mercedes Moné.
Ooh.
It's okay. Who's Sasha Banks?
I don't know her.
I don't seriously. Where'd that girl go? Mercedes
CEO
Moné
versus the boss.
and Nyla Rose. And they went just under 10 minutes. And I'll tell you right now, I liked that match a hell of a lot more than that long marathon. So that's my thoughts on the show last night right there is I thought Mercedes and Nyla had a hell of a match. And it was just under 10 minutes. So for me, I'll take that all day.
And another thing about that too is the fact that Nyla's been a day one. So the fact that we got to see her on the 250th show tells me right there that it mattered. To somebody backstage, like we were saying, maybe they just realized it was 250. No, it mattered. So having Nyla there against Mercedes, I almost said Sasha too, against Mercedes, and just showing the size disparity between the two and that one memeable moment of what are you doing kind of thing. I love that match. I could care less about the Baker Monet stuff, but the match itself was great. And in my opinion, I enjoyed it a hell of a lot better than the Ospreay MJF match, only because this isn't 1996. We don't need an Iron Man match at the end of WrestleMania with Bret and Shawn. That has passed. I think we need to kind of keep that to once a year and not use that as often as AEW likes to lean on it. Because I was at the Bryan versus Hangman one here in Texas, and I knew within 15 minutes in they're gonna go time limit, and they did, and I called it, and I hated it because I'm sitting there like nothing's urgent, nothing's gonna be a big deal. It's all false finishes until the end. So luckily we got at 59-59 a winner, for the MJF and Will Ospreay match. So
now, right quick, since we didn't specifically speak about it, since some people I saw were like, that was a bullshit finish after all that, which I think was part of the idea. How do we feel about 59-59 and then the Dynamite Diamond Ring being used to seal everything after a near hour?
It's all part of that build-up. All part of that build-up for what's going to happen in London.
I don't like it, but I understand it.
Yeah, you have that perfect story build-up. And they'll say 59-59. You'll hear that in the next promos for the next couple of weeks. Everything. It's just a perfect storyline build-up.
All right.
Yeah, I mean that seems to be the most obvious part, where they're just building up for All In at the end of the month, end of next month, or Wembley, whichever one it is. They're really close together, but yeah. I mean, that's fine. But now the question is, so you have this match, and it's a very top-heavy show. The first hour is one match.
Yep.
Nyla Rose versus Mercedes is fine, too. Because you got to sneak in that women's match. And then the main event is Swerve versus Okada. Do you think it's fair that you have Swerve and Okada on the same show as Friedman and Ospreay, they kind of pull against each other because one, obviously, it's the main event. I think it's for the championship, if I'm not mistaken.
No,
And
there was no
it's-
titles on the line yesterday.
This is champion versus champion.
Okay, champion. Okay, that's where it's then. So you're building up the elite. Swerve is on Rampage, trying to solidify his reign. Is something that we've talked about with it over the past month about how to make Swerve the people's champion, so to speak. And you have this thing, but everyone's still talking about the opener. If you had to book the show again, and you leave one, you keep the other? How do you work around that? Because it seems like the talk of the show is the hour-long match. Okay, rightfully so. Does that mean that do you kind of forecast that and go, well, we're going to give them an hour. Let's kind of filler the rest of the show with promo, maybe a decent B match. You got the women's match. Right. No big deal. We know where our bread is buttered, and it's before 9:00. And then you save that for Collision.
I think the idea that Tony was going with is the Swerve match with Okada was going to be what it was. It wasn't super long, anything. That was at the end of the show. It went all of 11:31 from what I'm seeing here. But I think he was banking on the match itself ain't the real important thing here. It's the big finish we're going to do, where we're going to do our ode to WCW and have the Elite run in as the NWO. We're going to have Darby drop from the ceiling as Sting and go off the air like it's WCW 96.
With Shivani on the stick. Exactly.
There you go.
Totally. I mean, that was essentially it was setting up blood and guts. That was the idea. I think the match was a vehicle to get to that finish in Tony's mind. And Darby dropping from the ceiling that's to me the most memorable thing at the end of the night, which is why I think he was going with in his head.
Yeah, sounds good. But then why do that now instead of on Saturday or on Rampage? But on Saturday, because out of all the things, people don't really seem to be talking about any of those other things that happened.
Nope.
Good, bad, or whatever. The talk seems to be about Freeman and Ospreay. And it's not just a popularity contest, because there are some top acts that fill the rest of the show. You had the pretty decent promo from Mariah May, continuing that storyline. You have Swerve and Okada setting up blood and guts. Okay, cool. So there's a lot of world building in the show, which is great. It's just that it's overshadowed by this mammoth elephant in the room of what's going on with Wembley and all that good stuff. So it's interesting that the show was booked that way, and maybe it's a bit nitpicky. Obviously, the ratings are up. Okay, cool. There's jack shit on TV yesterday, so let's just be clear that the ratings had to be up. No baseball, no other national sports going on, and every other news channel had pie-faced goons talking about things. But this isn't the politics podcast. This is the wrestling podcast. So it's kind of interesting to see where AEW goes from here, obviously. But why that they chose. I just think it's an interesting concept to be like, we're going to have our best match first, and then other equally important world building stuff that you really should stick around for. Except everybody's exhausted because we've just seen an hour-long match.
And I think this point where I talked about having that identity. So when you think about the overall booking, I'm not no professional, but we've seen this same script where your opening match or segment is your hot. It gets people energetic about what's coming to the show. At the 9:00 or the halfway point where you got that hour, it's like, okay, that's that midpoint where you're transitioning for whatever storyline you're doing at that point to set up what's going to be for your main event. And your main event is supposed to go home where it's like leaving you wanting more. And I think when you have that script in this type of show for 250, it pivots you in the corner, because you want to have all your top players that's in there so they can get recognized. So you got to have Swerve because he's your number one belt holder in the company. You still want to have some hot people like Ospreay and MJF, especially since MJF is just coming back, where you want to pivot that. But then here's where your booking comes in, where it's like, how do I book all these people, put them in the right place where it flows? And I think the identity right now where AEW really doesn't have the mindset of, one, how they need to book or raise their stars, or what story they're trying to tell from one show to the next, because even though Dynamite is their flagship show, they still have other shows, like you said, Crab, where it's like, okay, I can use these shows to still elevate to where we're trying to go. And I still don't know what that mindset is from when you go from Rampage, when you go from Collision, where you go for, that Dynamite. I think they don't know. So when don't have no clarity of what you need to do to not only build the stars, but how you're going to fragment, even on a big show like 250, I think that's where all the confusion and clutter comes in, where it doesn't know if this is going to fit in the right way if you try to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Fair enough.
Is it as simple as this? They're trying to close a TV deal. They haven't announced anything yet, and until that's done, essentially they are throwing anything and everything at the wall, open to get any viewers they can, with the idea that we have to close this deal. We got to try to move this needle any way we can, and to hell with everything else. If it blows up other stuff, whatever, we got to close this deal or find if WB ain't interested, we got to find somewhere else that is going to be interested. So we got to get attention on us one way or another. I mean, I think it might be as simple as that right now.
Well, think about how it started, right? We talked about very indie checklist box, right? Checkbox. Mm-hmm. So when I was going to say WCW, see, you got it in my brain now. When AEW started, it was the wrestling show, right? It wasn't sports entertainment. It was go, 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 indie darlings, like you said, started by a bunch of indie darlings and a billionaire. Now, 5 years later, have they evolved? I would say no. But like you said, Will, the TV contract be up soon. So what's going to get more eyes on the program? Go back to what we did. Indie, athletic, like storylines that are full of like blood and guts, to borrow the phrase. I don't know why Jericho's still on there. I guess because some people still haven't figured out he's not on WWE anymore. But I think that gives good credence to your argument, Will, that this might just be, hey, throw it against the wall, see if it sticks.
Could be.
Yeah. It's it'll be interesting to see how this relates to the their deal. Warner Brothers is obviously in the news also about what they're going to be. That whole television deal, which is going to come to a head sooner than later, is going to be very, very interesting for AEW. Warner Brothers, TNT has already lost the NBA. Hockey, I love hockey, but it's not really, doesn't really, not held up. They don't really have the corporate synergy with AEW that they should. It'll be very interesting to see what happens this fall. Meanwhile, NXT on CW, it's a go. Mm-hmm. So, I really want to see how that happens and how it relates to everything else going. So, but either way, good Dynamite. They needed this win. I think they gained 100,000 viewers over last week.
They were up.
So they were up
time in a while.
So they need that. Yeah, good on them for 250.
Yeah, and we'll see if they carry over that momentum next week to Blood and Guts. If it keeps going, or if it's just like, was 250 the draw, or was the marathon match a draw? Who knows? I mean, Blood and Guts usually does a good number for them as a signature match there.
I mean, speaking about things to give it away for free on free TV.
Yeah, well, that's always been a TV thing for them. That's never been
sure, but
hey, yeah, they're throwing out all the stops this July. That's for sure. All right, let's do this. We're gonna do our halftime break. When we come back, speaking about Blood and Guts, we'll hit the indie spotlight. But then after that, we got to talk about Mariah May and Toni Storm, because last week we recorded a day early, so the angle hadn't happened yet, and we had the follow up last night. And if there's anything in AEW I'm interested in right now, that is probably the thing I am most interested in, is the Toni Storm and Mariah May blood feud that we got going on here. So we're going to hit the commercial, indie spotlight when we come back, and then we'll get into the second half of the show. Stay with us, folks. Your Big Gold Belt Wrestling Podcast. We'll be back right after this.
A little birdie told me, everybody, that you may be interested in doing some sponsorship and advertising opportunities with us here at Big Gold Belt Media. You know what? You might as well, because we are the golden standard for all of your media needs. Why would you want to go anywhere else? Besides, all of your pre-roll ads, your mid-roll ads, as well as your on-air reads are going to be done by me, Damian G. Yeah, professional broadcaster, Damian G. We do all types of social media promotions. That means your podcast, your IG, your Facebook, your Twitter, and your business website, all get shouted out on our network here at Big Gold Belt Media, where we cover wrestling, movies, comics, and more. And you can find out more information and make those inquiries, kids, because, limited time offer here at biggoldbeltgroup@gmail.com. Again, that is biggoldbeltgroup@gmail.com. Why would you want to go anywhere else? I wouldn't. Well, I work here, but I still wouldn't even if I didn't. So again, Big Gold Belt Media for all your sponsorship and advertising opportunities, your podcast, your IG, your Facebook, your Twitter, all of your social media platforms, as well as any business website you want us to promote on our show. BigGoldBeltGroup@gmail.com, and let them know Damon G sent you.
Welcome back, folks, as we start our second half here tonight on the Big Gold Belt Wrestling Podcast. We like to see what's going on the indie scene, so here's Giant Crab with this week's Big Gold Belt Indie Wrestling Spotlight.
And this week we're going down to the Tidewater area for VCW, Virginia Championship Wrestling. That's July 27th, a Saturday at the Norfolk Masonic Temple in Norfolk, Virginia for Liberty Lottery. Rex Lawless, Paul London. Haven't seen Paul London in a minute, but Joe Keys is your champion. They're all going to be there. Virginia Championship Wrestling, Liberty Lottery, down in Norfolk. The Masonic Temple in Norfolk, right in like downtown Norfolk. That's next Saturday, July 27th. You can go ahead and get your tickets. VCWProWrestling.com. Do that now. VCWProWrestling.com for the event next Saturday, July 27th. That's Liberty Lottery from VCW, Virginia Championship Wrestling down in Norfolk. And that's the Big Gold Belt Indie Spotlight for this week.
There we go. Lots of indie shows happening all over the place. Paul London was just at SCI in Tennessee, the Second City Invitational.
Scenic City Invitation, yeah.
He was just at that. The Scenic City tournament last weekend. So Paul London's getting around all of a sudden, making dates in places.
That's awesome.
So, yeah, a name that we're not seeing as much recently. That's always good to see. So we're going to rewind a week here real quick. Because last week we had to record early. We were not technically live last Thursday. But it's a behind the scenes.
Keep breaking the fourth wall, Will.
Kayfabe.
Stay in kayfabe.
But because of that, Wednesday night Dynamite had not happened yet last week. So we have not gotten to talk about what closed the show the week prior, which, God, if there's an angle that I've seen recently that has been almost universally praised, I have not seen much about, like, maybe some people as far as like how the violence of it, but goddamn, Mariah May wins the Owen Hart tournament and then immediately bludgeons Toni Storm with the belt, draws blood, watch for the shoe, takes her to town with the heel, and just closes Dynamite in a scene of violence that I have not seen in a while. I thought it was tremendous. I thought it was a damn home run. And it was the most interesting thing I've seen in Dynamite in a long, long, long time. And then they followed it up this week with a very odd promo that I'm not sure how I feel about. So I'm not sure about the follow-up now, but goddamn, I'm still excited about this match as far as Toni and Mariah go. Thoughts on how they closed Dynamite, how they pulled off this run? I mean, they've been teasing this forever. They pulled the trigger in a hell of a way.
So I thought while we were talking, I had this thought process thinking, oh, they pulled the trigger a week too quick. But then I looked to see when All In was. It's a month from now.
Okay.
We have a month full of potential bludgeonings on both sides. They have something in their hands that AEW does right now to have women literally bludgeoning each other for 4 weeks, and not a catfight way, in an actual, like, I hate you blood feud. And how often, Will, do we talk about the old school blood feud that doesn't happen that often anymore, where they rip into each other? That attack, I didn't know Mariah May had it in her. I did not. I was surprised. I screamed out, holy shit. I checked out the Wrestling Classic because I know that's his homegirl. Wanted to check in with him. I said, wait a minute. Not only did they surprise everybody, they made me care about Mariah May, because I did not care. I cared more about Mina Shirakawa than I did Mariah May during that whole Are they friends? Are they not friends? But they have an opportunity here. If they want to make this a blood feud, I want Toni Storm to get her revenge at the pay-per-view, but I want to see Luther get destroyed by Mariah May, see him get run over by a car in the parking lot like it's NXT, something where Luther's got to catch it, where RJ City gets thrown in a garbage can, something to build off this, because that promo, Will, like you said, lackluster is not the word I'd use. Mid isn't even the word I'd use. It was just straight up, to borrow old phrase, it was just straight up whack. So please, AEW, I'm begging you. You got more eyes on the women's division than at any other point. Let them go crazy. ECW them, please.
So I'll add by saying this. Yes, yesterday's promo was a little bit weird for Toni Storm, but
Weird
I want to give credit. I want to give credit to Toni Storm, though. I'm gonna read something from Bleacher Report, because sometimes they do their little stock up, stock down. So I'm gonna read this. And I lost it. Here we go. Toni Storm has been the best storyline the company has produced in 2024 and the most compelling build to the AEW World's Championship match ever. I guess, for on the women's side. In order for that to work, where if you have a swerve that comes in where it's something surprise you, the person leading it has to build it up in a way where their story makes sense, their story is compelling. And I think Toni Storm has done that for AEW for like about a year now, from where her gimmick has shifted to where she is now. And then Mariah can now take that, be the chaser as a heel, and then make this into a compelling storyline for the women's that makes this even more epic. And when you think about great wrestlers that had their moments, this reminds me as big of a moment than when Shawn Michaels did his, at that time where he became that mega superstar in the barbershop scene. I think this can be as big as that because of what Toni Storm is really building up, where Mariah can take that and then move it to a higher level. I really think so, but it depends on the person who's being chased to make this believable for the person that they're building, if that makes sense.
I generally agree. I think that this is far and away the biggest thing that they have for the women's division. Best thing they've had in a long time. And I just think that's largely because of it feels a lot more organic. The storyline and the arc has been going on in a meaningful way. We've seen this storyline before. Athena, Billy Starks, the Misfits in Training, similar deal. But this is obviously has a lot more weight to it. Definitely seems like something that they need to set up for Wembley. Another big blow-off match. That card is actually coming together really nicely if we're forecasting a little bit. But yeah, I don't think that it's going to be a month of promos. But I do think they're going to dance around each other. It can't be a month of promos, please, Jesus. But
after last night.
Right. But they are going to dance around each other, for the next 5 weeks. And then they're going to head over to London and have the big blow-off match, probably for the title. I like it, and I want more of it. The promos, obviously, could use a little bit more work. The setup was fine. The execution was not. And I think that's what that was. But even still, I'm not really here for the promos anyway. I'm waiting for the match, and I want to see how the match is built. And I think that they're off to a good start with that.
Make it a hardcore match.
I was supposed to say, okay, here's my thought. Okay, Jordan Kirby on YouTube says Mariah is beating Toni at All In. Simple as that. You're saying a hardcore match, Damian. Since they already went so hardcore with the violence on this, since we had the bludgeoning, since we had the blood pouring already in the big turn, should out of the gate at All In, should there be a big stip on this? Should there be a big stipulation, you think? And if so, what should the stip be?
I mean, the easy answer is no DQ in some way. But I don't think a ladder match, no DQ is fine.
No.
But
a London street fight. An old-time street fight.
Don't jinx it, Will. That might be what they go with.
I quit match.
Last woman
that-
standing.
Any of
last
those would be okay.
Yeah.
Variations on a hardcore thing.
Yeah.
Jordan says First Blood. That would play into the turn. You could
Has
do that.
AEW had a first blood match before?
I don't
think
think
so.
so. They had blood and guts, but not first blood.
That's interesting.
I
Okay.
think they might have.
That might
It's
work.
I
hard for me
want
to
to say
remember.
once.
I want to say once too. But I can't remember what the hell it is off the top of my head without doing
But that
it.
was like early AEW.
Yeah, let me
Okay.
take
They
a look
really
here
will
while
have
we
to
are
book
talking.
that correctly with first blood, because as much as AEW has given you blood, you don't want any accidental things to like in the match too early where the
Yes.
payoff wouldn't be worth it for that. Even though I like the idea for the blood match, you have to book it very strategically though to make sure it lasts a while before you see that blood, or even hide the blood, maybe have a band-aid on the side, or whatever the case may be, where you don't see it, but you just got to make sure it's booked correctly.
Well, actually, it's got to be a no DQ match. You bring Mina Shirakawa in there and have her finally decide, and it's 2-on-1. Yeah. So I mean, yeah, I can see that happening, but still, I'm okay with all of these things.
Yes.
First blood, cage match, lumberjill, whatever you like. Whatever they got, I'm good for. I think it could work. So yeah,
You know what, Crab? That's a good one, actually. The Lumberjill, because that would get all the women on the card at the very least and get them a payday.
yeah.
That is
Yeah.
true.
And this would be for the women's championship, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's more than enough reason to set up some side stories and stuff like that. You got people beefing on the outside. I mean, it's a whole thing. But whatever they decide to go with, I'm not going to say there's no wrong answer unless it's a promo battle or debate. But but yeah, you do that. You bring in Mina. You have, and Jordan Kirby says, "What side does Mina choose?" I think she goes with Mariah May because Toni doesn't need the help.
She's got
Tony's the underdog right now. She's the one who's been betrayed.
Right. So Toni doesn't need the help. She's built this story into what it is from her. So everything is like playing off of her. So
Right.
between her, Luther, going back to basics, she can still do that whole thing and live in the silent film era, or maybe she graduates to the talkies. Who knows? But it's still to the point of Mariah May, win or lose, is given the ball to run with. And I think between her and Mina could absolutely go forward in a major way with that. Not just in America, but in Japan. And they need that cross-pollination between the two. So, I mean, that's the way I would do it. But I think that's like cool. That's a real easy watch come Wembley.
There we go. All right. Yeah, I'm glad we got to get into that, because that angle last week, I was like, oh my God, for the first time in ever, it was like AEW's got something here. They got something like unique with this. That finish was just so damn good. And then I don't know, that I'm not sure what the thought process was with the promo last night with dressing Mariah up as Toni and then just having her emulate the promo style, and just I don't know. I think they got a little too in their head with that last night, how they did it. Or it should have been a pre-tape if they were going to go that route instead of doing it out in the ring where she became the victim of the what chance last night in Little Rock.
I'm curious though what Celis said about this potentially being the barbershop moment. Like, do we view this as her as the Marty Jannetty of this situation already?
I mean, it's not. I wouldn't say it's a direct correlation, but
Is this make or break? I guess I'm saying from Mariah.
It's a make or break, because this is the moment where it's like, okay, this is it. We got something. We got a reaction. Yeah. We got the people talking about it even a week later after a fact, where it's important. And not just that, it's important for women's wrestling in a company that needs women's wrestling. And you have to build on this to say, okay, we got superstars that we could skyrocket here, where maybe people want to come to us to fight Mariah or to be a part of a storyline that Mariah is in. And this is where you have to build it. But once again, you can't overdo it. You can't overthink it. Whatever the payoff is at the end, it has to make sense so you can continue to build it. Because just as much as you can have that barbershop moment with Shawn Michaels. You can have a Kofi Kingston moment with Randy Orton where it's like, okay, nothing ever happened from this, but then thankfully Kofi got back up years later. You got to make sure you make these moments meaningful for that, especially for up-and-coming wrestlers that you're trying to build to be stars for a company, once again, that needs stars.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And a company that doesn't have Stephanie McMahon to save women's wrestling.
There you go.
What's the show?
There you go.
This is absolutely what they need to get it done.
This is it. This is Mariah's big moment. Her spotlight moment is coming in Wembley. Next month is going to be make or break for Mariah May. There we go. All right, what else we want to get into tonight? We got some time left here. There's a lot of little things going on.
So, quick question.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What does AEW do with Sammy Guevara?
Ooh, good question.
Is he still on paternity leave?
He's supposed to be coming back next week.
Mm.
I think next week.
I hear he's supposed to be coming back soon, but it's still to the point that he's been gone for so long.
Yep.
They don't need him. And of course, there is a contingency on the internet that would love to crucify him. There's a bigger contingency on the internet that just doesn't give a shit. So I think that the singles male roster is top heavy and dare I say full. Yes, he can go into the frozen abyss that is the paywall behind the paywall of honor, East Narnia, or wherever the hell they want to call it now. But realistically, Cody's not there to help him out. AEW isn't the place that he left when he went on paternity leave. What do you do with him?
It feels like his run is kind of run its course.
But that's sad.
It's like it's kind of is what it is. I mean, if he's going to be in anything, it's going to be something in the middle of the show. There's no spot near the top for him right now that I could see plugging him into.
Anything but going back to Jericho, please. Anything but that.
You don't want the sex gods. You don't want the tag team, the sex gods, to come back.
No, I am fully sexed out right now.
Oh wow, okay, that's good to know. You heard him, ladies. Absolutely sexed out.
I'm sexed out from the financial states. Yeah.
But this is so sad because once again, you mentioned it earlier. We're at the top of the show. 3 of us was at the show in DC, and you just kind of alluded to it, crap.
He was
he was the first person that you spotlighted in a great match.
He opened
with
the
Cody
show.
Rhodes. Yeah, he opened the first wrestler, and he had a great match against Cody. And it's like, okay, this is what we're talking about. AEW. This is how you build people that you may not know if you're a common wrestling fan, but if you follow wrestling, you know this guy can do something. And now we're talking about after he has his kid. Okay, what are we going to do with him? It's crazy. It's almost in a way where does he have to leave AEW to make sure he's known what he could do somewhere else?
Well, the question is, what is Sammy Guevara doing in the Impact Zone? That's
an option. That's an option.
Jordan Grace was already teasing surprises this weekend at Slammiversary. So who knows what that means?
Yeah, it just seems obviously, for reasons that we've discussed, it does seem like that the flame is flickering out for Sammy Guevara. A lot of potential, a lot of wasted potential, but yeah, I don't know where he fits in now.
Like you're talking, and I'm still trying to figure out where do we slot him. And you're right, I have no idea where we slot him.
But that's the thing. Like AEW doesn't have a C-level championship. Everything is like that B plus championship, and then the world championship.
What's the one Okada has?
The international championship.
And what's the one that MJF has?
No, I'm sorry.
MJF won the international.
He won the international championship. Okada has
because they split up the one that was 3 titles.
Their version of the TV title, I guess.
Yeah, Okada has a piece of that.
Is it the new Continental title?
Yeah, it's the one they had the tournament for.
Okay.
Yeah.
Continental Classic. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So right there, you could possibly have him against Okada, have them cost, I guess, the Elite Blood and Guts, and then you could slot him in a match against Okada.
But that makes him a face, and I don't like him as a face, honestly. I think he's better.
I don't like him, period.
You like him, period. You don't like him as an employee. So
well, I think the biggest issue for me is there's just so many more damn people that are not getting TV time that could be getting TV time. Now I'm like, if not him.
Right.
Give me somebody else, please.
Right.
So one other thing that's totally not related. On the other half of my screen, I have Chris Jericho is going to be in a movie. The movie is called Dark Match, and it is wrestling related because it's a horror movie set in a wrestling landscape where, it's a literal death match. And I was watching the trailer during the commercial break, and people are being bludgeoned to death. I found the article on bloodydisgusting.com. Cool, no problem with Jericho as an actor. He's done some movies before, but it's from the director of Wolf Cop.
Who?
If you haven't seen Wolf Cop, that's
I'm
fine.
missing out.
Yeah, it's fine. You don't have to. But my thing is, I don't know how I feel about Jericho as in a horror movie based around wrestling. It is the damnedest thing.
Too on the nose.
Right. When it comes out in September, the movie's called from the writer and producer and director of Wolf Cop. Chris Jericho stars in Dark Match, a pro wrestling horror movie. It seems absolutely ridiculous. Now I'm not even going to get into the story. We don't have that much time. But the question is, if this thing hits theaters, are you seeing Jericho in a wrestling horror movie?
That sounds like some direct to streaming action to me, and I sure ain't spending one penny on that.
Look, I would have thought this was a Skinemax movie.
It just hit me. That ain't direct to streaming. That sounds like a Tubi original. That's what that's gonna be.
Yes, a mockumentary, Tubi. The Mockbusters.
But speaking of direct-to-video, and this actually has me more excited. Catnado is coming out in October.
Okay, who's in this movie now?
Nobody. So basically, it's a bunch of like found footage segments pieced together about the Catnado. The poster says the forecast is clawful.
Oh boy!
Oh my god!
Oh, we're gonna have some good stuff this Halloween.
Right. So between Jericho in a wrestling movie, a wrestling horror movie, and Catnado, I think spooky season is surely upon us. Last thing I want to bring to the table is Tony Khan said on comicbook.com that AEW is thinking about running a stadium show in America, but it's not going to happen anytime soon. Now, the obvious thing is that they have this very short residency with the city of Arlington down there at the esports arena in the parking lot of Globe Life Field.
Okay, cool. This weekend.
Yeah, that starts very soon and it goes on through August. Obviously, if you have a relationship with the city of Arlington and you want to run a major stadium show during the summer, I don't know. They have a major stadium in Arlington that's usually not booked through the summer. What's the likelihood of AEW coming to Jerry's World? More importantly than that, if they do, would you go?
No. Okay. Well, since I live in Texas, I'll say this.
I would like to hear this.
WrestleMania happened at Jerry World. People were loving that day. AEW has barely filled the Caldwell Center over in Garland.
Okay.
That holds 5,000 people.
The high school arena?
Yes, and they've barely filled that up. There were a lot of missing seats the last time I went there. So, do they go? If they want to be embarrassed, yeah, sure, run in Jerry World if you want to be embarrassed. If this was the first All In, I would say give it a shot. If this was the Wembley show, like something to that effect, give it a shot. But you just now started making a profit in terms of your viewership, right? You're getting more and more viewers by the week now. And if you try to pull the plug too early on going to Jerry World, I would be surprised if they get 6,000.
Ooh.
And that's on the high mark.
They'd be running a corner in the building like when TNA ran the Alamo Dome. And they straight up just ran like
It's at least 130. I believe 100,000 people can fit in there comfortably because Texas doesn't care about personal space. So if you barely get 5,000 in that kind of arena, yeah, you'll never be welcome back again in the big boy houses. Sorry.
I have nothing against that. I have nothing against that.
So, logistically, I've been to Globe Life Field in Arlington, which is spitting distance from AT&T Stadium, and it's a shit show. I don't need to go back until they have a bus that'll get you out of there. It's hell to drive. It's just a mess, and I can't imagine what going to a packed house, 80,000 seats Cowboys game is going to. So for that reason, logistically, it's such a fucking madhouse getting out of there, getting in and out of there, that it's not worth it. I'm not taking a $50 Uber ride to the closest Trinity Railroad station, and hope to God that the show ends before 9 p.m. because that's when any transit in the area stops running.
And Lauren knows if it's an AEW show, it's going to be 5-6 hours.
Yeah.
It's going to be 5 or 6 hours. So no, I absolutely do not need to put. If it were in a city where I could walk back to my hotel or get on a train and get out of there quickly, no, it's a bitch to drive into. It's murder to drive out of, and I'm not paying $70 for an Uber just to get back to my hotel near the hospital district in Dallas. Not interested. With that said, though, obviously, if you build it, people could come.
Could. That's a
there are no guarantees. And this is obviously a show in America and not in Europe or Mexico where you got to stay up to 2 a.m. to watch the show. AEW has only been outside of North America once. So yes, everybody and their mother is going to want to be at that show again, especially if they're booking the hometown boy, hometown being relevant to the country, to book that show. We saw it happen in WWE up in Toronto, where the hometown kids did a thing. We've seen it happen occasionally in AEW, where the hometown kids do a thing. They're going to be in Norfolk, so it definitely all eyes on Adam Page when they go down there for that show. I think it's very possible that they could get 50,000 in Dallas, in Arlington. I think it's possible, but it would have to be one of the bigger shows. It would have to be Full Gear. It would have to be what the hell is that thing called? Actually, and somebody said it earlier. Why would WCW give away Hogan Goldberg at the Georgia Dome? This could be that moment for AEW, where you have the return of Kenny Omega or Jericho's retirement match or Danielson's retirement match. His last
when
match
Sting
ever.
retired earlier this year. I mean, that was a big
I could give you the Danielson one.
Yeah.
I could see because there's a WWE crossover of people that would want to go see his final match.
That's cheating, though.
Right.
That's cheating.
I mean, no, I'm not saying it's not, but you gotta get. This is what we talked about earlier.
There's got to be an extra hook.
Yeah.
You gotta give them a hook to get in there, and just to say that, oh yeah, we're having a match. Also, it's at the Cowboy Stadium. That's good enough for maybe 10,000 people. Okay, cool. But realistically, you want to fly people in for this event. This needs to be must see.
It needs to be a destination.
Ashe, for example, was must see. History was made there. There is no reason to believe. Well, it's the fourth show at Grand Slam. Do I need to go? Maybe. If the Mets are playing, I might go. But then again, if the Mets are playing, fuck that train. I won't be on the 7 after a 20,000 seat AEW show and Citi Field letting out. It's a shit show. So I think it could happen. I kind of want it to, not necessarily in Arlington, but I would like to see them do a stadium show in America. I think that would be cool. I would like to see them, take the Double or Nothing out of Vegas, take All Out of Chicago, Full Gear, Revolution. They only really do 4 major pay-per-views. One of them could be a stadium show.
With the right match, I think that's the key. With the right
match, the right scenario.
Yeah.
But
it could be
a very special Dynamite in Dallas just because it's at the stadium. Yeah, that's asking for trouble.
Unless you're bringing Emmett Smith and Troy Aikman to town to be like special guest referees, I don't see it.
Gotta
Oh,
call
no.
in. Tony got to call in those NFL favors.
Mm.
You
Yeah.
know, something like that.
Jerry Jones on
All
a
right.
pole match. There you go.
Oh no!
Done. Done.
All
Go
right,
out, Will.
we made it to our hour. We did it one way or another, folks. Thanks for being with us here this week, folks. Thursday night, 8 p.m. Your Big Gold Belt Wrestling Podcast is live each and every week, and we are so glad you joined us here tonight. In the meantime, you can keep up with us on social media at Big Gold Belt across the board, whether it's Twitter, X, Instagram, whatever. At Big Gold Belt is where you can find us. Of course, the website, biggoldbelt.com, wrestling, movies, comics, and more. If you're into comics, you'll want to keep an eye on that this week because editor-in-chief 2 Chains will be at Comic-Con this coming week. So lots of coverage from that. Last night, I think he saw some Wolverine and Deadpool. So there's some stuff about that I know on the Twitter feed today. So like we said, at Big Gold Belt on the X Twitter machine, some stuff about Wolverine and Deadpool on there. And next week, he will be live on the scene at Comic-Con. So lots of stuff coming with that in the next 7 days. But other than that, in the meantime, watch some wrestling, go to some indie shows. Please stay cool because it's hot as hell out there. And hopefully we're going to get a relief from that, like how we started the show. But until next week, we will talk to you then.